Welcome to the AAC Report, Monday, April 22nd. I'm Jeff Allen. Coming up, we have championships being decided in the conference, and Spencer Tuckerman of OVarsity.com will join us to talk about the coaching change in men's basketball at Cincinnati, with Mick Cronin leaving for UCLA, and Northern Kentucky's John Brannen being hired to head up the men's basketball squad at UC. Spencer standing by in the virtual green room. We'll get to him in just a moment. Meanwhile, the American Women's Golf Championship, the Houston Cougars have gone back-to-back. They win it by 30 strokes last week at 13 under par. UCF finished second at 17 over. Memphis was third at 21 over par. The Cougars were paced, of course, by their now the two-time American Player of the Year, Leonie Harm, as she won the individual honors at 8 under par. UCF's Elizabeth Moon, the freshman of the year in the American, finished second at 6 under par there. And if you haven't heard Leonie Harm's story, she was struck by a drunk driver at the age of 15. The vehicle was going 45 miles an hour, and that's very slim odds that she would even survive that. But she has, and she has recovered and has become a tremendous golfer. Again, two-time Player of the Year in the American. She also won the Women's British Amateur last year. She's recently got engaged. So all is going well for her, and she is quite a story. One other honor to mention, Houston's head coach Gerard Chadwell was named the Coach of the Year. He is the third time he has won that award in 4 seasons. On the men's side of the links, Sunday is when the American Championship started for the guys. And Mac Meisner leads the individual honors from SMU, and SMU has the early team lead. And that was after Sunday's play. Joining us now to talk about the changing of the guard with Cincinnati basketball is Spencer Tuckerman from OVarsity.com, which covers everything Bearcats. Spencer, thanks for taking the time.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me again.
So before we talk about John Brannen coming on board, it seems weird to think of Mick Cronin actually leaving. He was a Cincinnati guy of all Cincinnati guys, having grown up there, a UC grad, assistant coach for a while. Then after becoming a successful head coach at Murray State, he became the UC head coach and really restored the Bearcats program. Was there ever talk of possibly him ever leaving?
There kind of always was. I was sort of in the crowd that was like, I'll believe it when I see it. You never want to be in the position where you're saying our coach would never leave because, Cincinnati's been through that with football. UCF's been through that with football. There's always the chance that the coach that you're in love with is going to leave if the money is right, if the program is right. So I wouldn't say I thought he was never going to leave, but I thought that there was a pretty good chance he was going to be at Cincinnati a long time. And I thought that even up until the end of the season this year. And so, yeah, it still is weird. I mean, the university tweeted out a photo of practice yesterday, and Mick Cronin was not the coach at that practice, and it was a very surreal moment for me.
So he had a great run, 9 straight NCAA tournaments, 1 Sweet 16 appearance. That's a pretty good bar for John Brannen to have to achieve.
Yeah, and I think that really speaks to the work that Mick Cronin did at Cincinnati, because when he got to Cincinnati, it was, man, you've got a really tough job to do because you've got one player on scholarship, you're playing in the Big East, and now you have to build this program back up from the dirt. None of the fans really like you because you're not Bob Huggins, so good luck. And now it's almost kind of a similar thing here, but for the opposite reasons, because John Brannen comes in and he has to live up to Mick Cronin, and he has to continue what Mick Cronin has done. And Mick Cronin has set such a high bar that I think it's going to be difficult. Not saying it's impossible, but I do think it's going to be difficult for John Brannen to live up to at the beginning. And I think that's a testament to what Mick Cronin did.
And I think the other thing that's kind of interesting, too, is not only building the basketball brand, but he was a key cog in getting the arena improvements.
Yep. Yeah, it is. one thing you can say about Mick Cronin, I mean, a lot of people have opinions on his personality. A lot of people have opinions on the style of play he coached. A lot of people have opinions on his sort of lack of success in the tournament. But no one can doubt that he left the program better than he found it. And a big part of that is the arena. And the Cincinnati job was much more attractive looking for a new coach this time around because of how awesome that arena renovation is.
So UCLA came a knocking. He was probably maybe fourth, fifth choice in that job search. How do you think his makeup will help him in dealing with a somewhat delusional administration and fan base in California?
It's going to be tough. I don't know. That's a very tough fan base to deal with. And I think Mick Cronin's stubbornness and his hard-headedness will probably both help him and hurt him out there, because to a certain extent, he's not going to let the outside noise affect him. He's not going to let it change the way he coaches, and it does work. I mean, we saw it at Cincinnati. But on the other hand, I think some of the way he does things will get him into trouble at UCLA in ways that it didn't at Cincinnati, just because, like you said, that fan base is a little bit delusional at the moment.
Yeah, they definitely have way high expectations than, living off the John Wooden era past.
Right.
And they have, had just maybe a little little blips of successes here and there with Jim Herrick and Steve Lavin, but nothing long term and sustainable. Right.
And I think if you're a UCLA fan who's just looking to bring respectability back to the program, I think Mick Cronin is a great coach. He's going to win a lot of games. He's going to instill discipline. He's not going to have kids that get in trouble, and he's going to be successful every year. I mean, he made the last 9 tournaments at Cincinnati, which is not an easy thing to do. If you're the type of UCLA fan that's looking for number 1 draft picks and Final Fours, Mick Cronin hasn't necessarily done that at UC, and maybe the resources at UCLA allow him to do that, but that's not really what my expectations would be for him if I was a UCLA fan.
So let's talk about the new man in charge, John Brannen. Won't be a lot of relocation fees since he's just coming from Northern Kentucky, and he's coming with some good success there, having led the Norse to 2 NCAA tournaments in his 3 seasons. How's the fan base reacting so far?
I think off the bat, people were kind of lukewarm, I guess. Not that very few people I saw were upset by the hire. I think it was a lot of, well, okay, I guess that makes sense. But I think since then, people have really started to get on board. And I think, honestly, this is maybe the most united I've seen the fan base around the basketball program since maybe 2012 when Cincinnati had their Sweet 16 run. I thought Brannen did a really good job in the press conference sort of outlining his vision for the program, and especially considering that vision includes some offense, and it includes some more aggressive recruiting maybe, some analytics, even analytics when it comes to scheduling, which is something that Cincinnati never did under Mick Cronin. So it does seem to a certain extent like even if we're taking a risk stepping away from a coach that brought the ultimate consistency, it does seem like we're sort of turning a page and taking a step into the future with the program.
So former Bearcat star Nick Van Exel had campaigned for the job, and given the success of Penny Hardaway in Memphis, was the brass tempted by him in any way?
The athletic department, I would say not really. The fan base definitely had that moment where you saw what Penny Hardaway did at Memphis to get the ball rolling there, and I think people like the sexiness of it. I mean, he's a big name. He's a fan favorite among the program, and Penny Hardaway in Memphis brought in some huge recruits, and I think it's tempting for the average fan to see that and say, well, let's get Nick Van Exel. But I think at the end of the day, the situations in Memphis and Cincinnati are pretty different, and asking Nick Van Exel to come in with the expectation to copy what Penny Hardaway did is unfair and unrealistic, and I think that's ultimately why the administration never really gave him a serious look.
So Brannen comes in with a team that has had great success. They were the number 2 team in the American this year and the tournament champions. Will the player of the year in Jaron Cumberland be back? That's a probably big question to be answered still.
That's a very big question. I think if I had to bet money on it, I would say he returns next year. That's obviously not set in stone. He is just now meeting the new coach. he has not yet declared for the draft, but I'm assuming he will do that just to explore the waters a little bit. So there's a lot still left to be decided there, but my gut feeling is that yes, he will be back, because I don't think he's quite on the NBA draft boards. And I think, honestly, this new coaching staff and their focus more on offense will do him some good next year, and I think he can really succeed.
And as far as the rest of the team goes, I mean, you still have some other returning players as well that, should they elect to stay, that make Cincinnati still a viable contender.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of the big uneasiness among the fan base right now is that Trayvon Scott, was a big piece last year. It seems like he will be back, which is huge. Some question marks around, I guess, Keith Williams, who was Cincinnati's number 2 scorer this past season. Some question marks around Nazir Brooks, who was their starting center. That's a big piece who no one really knows about. And then Logan Johnson, who will be a sophomore next year, was sort of a reserve point guard this past year, but he was a big recruit, very athletic kid. All 3 of those guys, I would say, are the current players we're worried about retaining. And then obviously there's Samari Curtis, who's their incoming recruit for this upcoming season. He was Ohio Mr. Basketball. So he's a big name that we're adding to the ranks. Again, if we can keep him on board, it seems like we probably will be able to. But again, there's a lot of probablys right now, which is, I think, making some people nervous.
So it was reported that the football coach, Luke Fickell, was actually part of the interview process. That's a pretty interesting twist, I would think.
Yeah, he actually did the same when we hired our new baseball coach a couple of years ago. We hired Scott Guggens. We actually stole him from Xavier, which was a pretty big moment for the fan base. It's always good when you can steal a coach from a rival. But yeah, Luke Fickell was part of that process as well. And I think it's clear that the athletic department thinks very highly of him, obviously outside of just his coaching ability, but his ability as an ambassador for the university and for the city, and his ability to sell other coaches on what is possible at Cincinnati. And I think that's really cool that he's bought into doing that for someone who's only been there for 2 seasons.
Well, and he's definitely highly thought of, as well as, obviously his success from year 1 to year 2 with the football program. Spring practice, of course, is underway. And how are things looking for the Bearcats on the football side?
I think this football season is going to be interesting because I think the big narrative around the season is, by all estimation, the football team will probably be better than they were last year. But the schedule is such that I think there's a good chance the record drops. It's going to be hard to go 11-2 with the schedule they've got coming up. So the talent is there. We'll see how it plays out in the record because they've got some big games.
But they certainly will be a viable contender for the Eastern Division title. UCF is going to go through a quarterback change for the season, and unknown who their star will be at this point. And it should be an interesting race to the finish for that this year.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this football season just for obvious reasons. I think Cincinnati's offense was pretty good last year. And they sort of got by on elite defense. And I think this year it should balance out a little bit more. So rather than having, an A+ defense and a B- offense, I think we'll have a B+ offense and a B+ defense. And I think in the long run, that'll make them more stable and not rely so heavily on getting stops like they did last year.
All right. Well, Spencer Tuckerman from OVarsity.com covered everything that's related to the Bearcats. Got some shameless plugs you want to do for social media? Anything you got coming up?
Oh, man. Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at OVarsity. That's really the main one. We're also on Instagram. I'd say that's about it. You can go to OVarsity.com and you can read everything about this past season. The last thing I put up there was sort of a retrospective on the Mick Cronin era, and I'm sure I'll have something coming up about how the future is looking with John Brannen.
All right, we look forward to that. Spencer, thanks again.
Thanks for having me.
And we have yet more championships to discuss in the American. UCF wins their first American Athletic Conference Women's Tennis Championship. Tournament of Most Outstanding Player Valeria Zaleva and doubles partner Ksenia Kuznetsova were winners in both singles and doubles to lead the Knights to that championship with a 4-0 win against USF Sunday morning at the USTA National Campus. Zaleva went 2-0 in singles matches in the tournament, including a straight-set victory against a nationally ranked opponent on Sunday. UCF won all 3 of its tournament matches by 4-0 scores and earning the Americans' automatic bid to the 2019 NCAA Championship. On the men's side of the net, USF freshman Chase Ferguson won the clinching match at the number 2 singles seconds after UCF had tied the score. The Bulls win their 5th American Athletic Conference men's tennis championship in 6 years with a 4-3 victory over the Knights. And they, too, gained the 2019 NCAA Championship automatic bid from the American. USF improved to 17-1 all-time in the 6-year history of the American Championship, returning to the top spot in the conference after falling to Tulane in last year's final. Let's talk about some weekly honors in baseball. The player of the week is Jared Triolo. Hit .583 in a 3-1 week, which included a 4-1 victory over, of course, Triolo plays for Houston. I should have mentioned that from the start. Again, those stats in the 3-1 league, a 4-1 victory over number 7 Texas A&M, and a series win against Cincinnati, pushing the Cougars into third place in the American standings. Triolo had 3 hits in games 1 and 3 of the weekend series against the Bearcats, adding 4 RBIs, 3 runs scored, 4 walks, 2 stolen bases, and a double on the week. And he got on base in each game, slugging .667. The pitcher of the week is Jake Agnes of Cincinnati. Earns his 3rd American Weekly honor this year after striking out a career-high 14 in going a career-long 8 2/3 innings in a 5-1 series opening win against UConn on Thursday night. Fanned at least 1 batter in all 9 innings that he worked, scattering 5 hits and a solo home run. His only walk of the day was issued with 2 outs in the 9th. From the 3rd through the 9th, he retired 18 of 19 faced, including 13 consecutive putouts there. And on the softball honors, Alexis Perry of Tulsa is the player of the week in softball, helping them to their 5th straight American Series win and 2nd series sweep by hitting .545 with 2 doubles, a grand slam, and 6 RBIs. Had at least 1 hit in all 4 games and posted season highs with 3 hits and 4 RBIs in the season finale against UCF. And the pitcher of the week was Georgina Korick from USF, went 2-0 with a pair of complete game shutouts against UConn last weekend, while also recording a save. She's pitched 142 innings without allowing a run, allowing 9 hits and only 1 for extra bases. Struck out 28 batters last week to reach and surpass the 200 strikeout mark for the season. Thanks for joining us for this edition of the AAC Report. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at JeffAllen_88, and I also invite you to join me for my personal podcast, Jeff Allen Sports Talk. Go to JeffAllenSportsTalk.com. Catch me over there. And as always, don't forget the Sons of UCF and Knightline, as the Knightline Sports Network keeps you up to date with all things UCF and all things in the American. This has been the AAC Report only on the Knightline Sports Network. I'm Jeff Allen. Thanks for listening.